Hi, welcome back. This is part 2, FNAF 2. If you missed part 1, watch that first, then come back to this. Now I'm in luck for this one because Scott has already confirmed a pretty popular theory on this game already to be 90% accurate. The theory in question, of course, being Game Theory's episode on FNAF 2. And with the benefit of hindsight, we know what major mistake is in that theory. So this video is essentially me just reiterating every point that video made, bar the error. And there's some additional information that wasn't mentioned in that theory that I feel is important to mention here too. So like last time, let's quickly go over what happens in this game. You play as a night guard called Jeremy Fitzgerald, and this time you're working in a brand new location that we know, thanks to the paycheck you received at the end of the week, takes place in 1987. And during our week of work, there's an ongoing investigation taking place at the same time.
There's been somewhat of an investigation going on. We may end up having to close for a few days. I don't know.
Now hold on a second. I hear you saying 1987, new location? But you said the first game takes place in 1993. So how could this possibly be a new location? And on top of that, the phone guy is alive and well, despite dying in the first game. And they make a point of the animatronics being able to walk around.
They've spent a small fortune on these new animatronics. Facial recognition, advanced mobility. They even let them walk around during the day. Isn't that neat?
Something we know by the time of FNAF 1 is no longer allowed. They even have the old characters from the previous location in the back room. Clearly this is a sequel, right? Nope, it isn't. By the end of night 6, Phone Guy tells us that he will take over the night shift himself.
When the place eventually opens again, I'll probably take the night shift myself.
Which lines up with him being the guard in FNAF 1. There's also a mention at the end of the newspaper you receive at the end of the week of the older characters being reused for a new, smaller restaurant. And given the map layouts for both the first and second game, it's clearly a smaller restaurant, which means this game is a prequel to the first. The one point that does need explaining, however, is the fact that the older animatronics still came from a previous location. Which still works, but it just means that there's an even older restaurant. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to be referring to these three restaurants as Fazbear's the First, Fazbear's the Second, Fazbear's the Third. Fazbear's the Third is where we play in FNAF 1, Fazbear's the Second is where we play here in FNAF 2, but Fazbear's the First is where most of the story actually happens. The one location we don't play in. Ever. And people wonder why the story seems to make no sense. Now this is where most of those mini-games come into play, and I'll explain them now in chronological order. The first mini-game chronologically is this one with the kid outside of the restaurant. A purple guy pulls up in a purple car, kills the child, and drives off. When the minigame ends, the puppet jump scares the player, seemingly implying that the soul of that child is now inhabiting the puppet. It's also worth mentioning that this building does not look like Fazbear's the Second or Fazbear's the Third. It's a much smaller building, which seems to imply that it may in fact be Fredbear's Family Diner, a different location mentioned in one of Phone Guy's calls. Which would add up because Phone Guy says that's an old building that's been closed for years.
I think the name of the place was Fredbear's Family Diner or something like that. It was closed for years though. I doubt we'll be able to track anybody down.
The second minigame chronologically is the Foxy Go 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 minigame. You go out to greet the kids once, twice, but on the third time, the purple guy is there again, smiling, and as you enter the room, the kids are dead. The third minigame chronologically is Give Gifts, Give Life, in which you play as the puppet resurrecting the souls of the dead children inside of the animatronics. And yes, all 5 souls are resurrected. On the very last frame before the Golden Freddy jump scare, that's when you see the 5th child. And the final minigame is the Save Them minigame, during which you come across 5 more bodies scattered around the building, until you're attacked by the purple guy, who responds to the puppet's plea to save them with, "You can't." Looking at the purple guy's sprite in this minigame, we can actually see that he has what appears to be a security badge on him. And given the phone guy's comments about how the previous night guard quit and is now running the day shift,
you're only the second guard to work at that location. The first guy finished his week but complained about conditions. We switched him over to the day shift.
There's a very strong implication that the purple guy was that previous night guard. So, now that we've established a basic timeline, the background of the killer, let's talk about the ongoing investigation. Now we can confidently say that the missing children's incident happened at Fazbear's the First, with both the old withered animatronics from the previous location being able to move around, as well as the new toy animatronics being tied to a criminal database, implying that they're trying to prevent something like this from happening again. It means that the newspapers we saw in the first game are referring to events that happened at Fazbear's the First. News articles in which we learn that a killer was caught and charged, but never convicted. And for as much as I'm sure Purple Guy would like to believe that he got away scot-free with child murder, the police aren't just gonna drop the case just because the kids were never found. They're still missing. And that is what the investigation is about. The authorities are trying to learn as much information about both the building, its employees, and its history to understand what might have happened to them. And it all comes to a head on night 5. With the police getting closer to the truth, Purple Guy quits and leaves.
When we get it all sorted out, we may move you to the day shift. A position just became available.
What the police choose to do next is interesting. This will probably be a big point of contention, but hear me out on this. What is the purpose of contacting the original restaurant owners for the sake of this investigation? If it truly has been closed for years, and it is an even older restaurant than Fazbear's the First, what good will that do the current investigation? They are not trying to get in contact with Fredbear's Family Diner because they were the original restaurant. They are trying to get in contact with them because that restaurant is the original owner of the spare yellow suit.
Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right.
Fredbear's Diner is not the original restaurant. It's a competitor. One that was forced to sell their business to Fazbear Entertainment after a tragic incident took place outside their building. Alright, so as far as story goes, that's pretty much all we have. But there's a few more mysterious things in this game that I'd like to address before I go. Firstly, at the start of each night we get a cutscene where we appear to be playing as Freddy. There's a fairly simple explanation to this. What we're seeing here are the souls of the children reawakening within the animatronics. Secondly, the Bite of 87. For as iconic of a moment as it is within the fandom, it's actually not in this game. Although never confirmed, it's highly suggested that the night guard that we play as, Jeremy Fitzgerald, is the one who gets bit the following day as we are moved to the day shift and are told to stay close to the animatronics. Thirdly, keeping on the topic of night guards, on night 7 we are playing as a different character called Fritz Smith, which adds even more evidence to the fact that Jeremy is no longer working there because of his injuries. What's notable about Fritz himself, however, is the fact that he is also fired for tampering with the animatronics and odor, the same way Mike Schmidt from the first game was. If it only happened once, it would be no more than a funny joke. But the fact that it happened twice, now I'm starting to think there's more to it. Perhaps Fritz and Mike aren't two separate people at all. And finally, the shadow animatronics. On incredibly rare chances, a shadowy version of Freddy can appear in the back room, and a shadowy version of Bonnie can appear in your office. If we look closer at the model for Shadow Freddy, we can see that it's a replica of Withered Golden Freddy. And if this was a one-off random Easter egg, then I probably wouldn't think too much about it. But the fact that there is a second Shadow animatronic seems to suggest otherwise. But Shadow Bonnie is just a replica of Toy Bonnie, I hear you say. Not exactly. This version has a lot more teeth. So if this isn't supposed to be a replica of Toy Bonnie, then what Bonnie is this supposed to be? I guess you'll just have to tune in next week to find out. Thanks for watching.